Hey, it is Xennial Gamer, and we're back with part 2 of the account showcase. Today we're going to be doing fire monsters. Now, before I jump in, I first just want to thank all of you who left comments and likes and subscribes on the part 1 of the video. It was really helpful, and in today's video I'll be making a couple of changes based on the feedback that you provided. So with that said, let's jump straight into our first monster, which is Rauk. Now, my Rauk is on Violent Blade. He's on attack, crit damage, attack. And this is a Rauk that's built entirely for PvE. Now, Rauk is one of the best monsters in the game, period. Very versatile, and if you're using him for PvP, then he works great in Swift or in a really fast Violent build. If you're using him for PvE, then he works also with Violent or Rage or Fatal. So next up we have Shayna. Now, my Shayna build is explained in the DB10 video, so I'll leave an info card on screen, but she's going to be in Violent, Fight, Speed, Crit Damage, and Attack. Now, next up we have Colleen. Now, Colleen, my Colleen was built for R5, and I haven't changed her runes since then. I use her in my my Gillis Labyrinth Hell team, and once in a blue moon I'll use her in PvP, but she is a usable monster in PvP, and the overall build here is not bad. I just usually have better options. Okay, next we have Kamoon. Now, he is in one of my most efficient rune sets overall. This is like more than 103% efficiency set. He is going to be in Swift, Destroy, Speed, Crit Damage, and HP. Now, on this build, again, it's so efficient that it's hard for me to really say I wish I had this or that. But if I were to put anything else in here, it would obviously be a little bit more HP just because of his passive, and I wouldn't mind having a little bit of extra crit rate. And of course, more speed is always good. Okay, next up we have Rocky. Now, my Rocky was literally just ruined for the Miho video I did a couple of days ago. She's actually not skilled up. So once I get to skill Rocky up, I would actually go for a build very much like this, except I would need a little bit more accuracy, a little bit more speed, and that would probably have to come at the cost of a little bit of attack, just in terms of how many stats you can put into one monster. Okay, next we have Kali. Now, you can see Kali, 244 speed. In this build, her Tectonic Shift does just under 35,000 damage. She's in a Fatal Blade build, speed, crit damage, attack. She's speed tuned to work with Odin and Bastet, which is a very common comp that I use in Siege offense, and I do use her once in a while in Arena offense as well with the same two monsters. Okay, next up we have Belager. Now, this is my BJR5. It's my only Belager, but he's built for BJR5, obviously, so he's going to be in Rage Will. Okay, next up we have Rakuni. My Rakuni is in Violent Nemesis. That's generally the best build for Rakuni, would be that Violent Nemesis. He's going to be in Speed, HP. So overall, my Rakuni is a lot slower than you'd like and probably not quite as tanky as you'd like, and why in the world he has crit rate and accuracy is beyond me. Basically, this is a monster that I use to counter a lot of crowd control comps, you know, Triton Jean or Nephthys or Rika, things like that. But I eventually switched over to Tetra, which is a much better counter for those types of comps. These days, I very rarely use him. Just once in a while, I'll use him in Siege in a 4-star base. Okay, next up we have Hua. Now, my Hua is in Fatal Blade. She's in Speed, Crit Damage, Attack. I use her in Labyrinth for my Gillis team, and then I use her once in a while in 4-star bases in Siege offense. Okay, next up we have Bulldozer. So my Bulldozer is in, surprise, nobody will expect this, Rage Will, Defense, Crit Damage, Defense, just like every single other Bulldozer in the game, right? So he does about 47,000 damage in guild content. Overall, very happy with this build. I use him frequently. I will point out that 24 accuracy, when you're building your Bulldozer, don't completely ignore accuracy, because the stun off his skill 1 is really useful, especially if you're using him against a Perna comp, because he can control that Perna through his stuns. Okay, next up we've got Perna. Now, you can probably see you've seen enough of my stats by now to know that Perna is not in one of my most efficient rune sets, and I don't really have a great reason for you. I do use Perna on a somewhat regular basis. I use Perna in Siege defense. I use Perna in Guild and Siege offense. It's just, I always seem to wind up having another monster that I'd prefer to put the better rune on more. So eventually I do want to boost up Perna's build. Mainly the biggest things I need, another couple thousand HP, another couple hundred attack, and it would be nice to have a couple more accuracy, because the skill 1 stuns from Perna can be really useful. But I am, of course, in a Violent build. It's going to be Speed, Crit Damage, Attack. Now, I'm using Nemesis. A lot of people will use Will for Perna. I personally think Nemesis and Will are about equal, and I'd even throw Revenge in there as an option. The reason is because Perna's base defense is so low and Perna is so squishy that it can be one-shot through will runes half the time anyway. But if you're using Nemesis, then your attack bar skyrockets and you get to steal a turn. If you're using Revenge, obviously once in a while you'll get a Revenge stun. Okay, next up we've got my Garo. Now Garo is going to be in Vampire Revenge, and this is another monster where you could go with any of Revenge, Nemesis, or Will. But with Garo, I think Will is not as good, or at least not as important as Revenge or Nemesis, which do have a consistent impact throughout a fight. That's usually going to be a longer fight when you're using Garo. Overall, Garo he's actually just a little under 100% efficiency, which is my target for all monsters, is to reach 101% is always my target. So he does have some room for growth, but I still am very happy with his build overall. Okay, next up we've got Verd, and I don't really use Verd all that often outside of RTA. Once every few sieges, I'll use him on offense, and that's about it. So he doesn't have my greatest rune set. He's in Violent Revenge, which is kind of the only way to build a PvP Verd these days, or Triple Revenge. Those are your two options. Violent Revenge. Actually, there's a third option. You can go Violent Revenge, Triple Revenge, or Double Revenge Will. Those are the three really main options for Verd. So I'm in speed, crit rate, and HP, and you'll notice even with the crit rate rune, I'm only at 85 crit rate. Obviously, it's better to be 100 crit rate, but 85 is usually sufficient. You get 15 crit rate bonus on attribute advantage. You get 30 crit rate bonus on the skill too. So I still activate my passive almost every time with it. Okay, next up we've got Vanessa. Now my Vanessa is in my arena defense, and then I use her once in a blue moon in siege offense, but I do use her a couple fights a day. I'll run into a team where I think that the 9 extra speed lead from Vanessa versus Ciara is really going to matter. Or I know they're going to snipe one of my monsters and I want the resurrect from Vanessa. So she is going to be in Violent Revenge, but the slot 2 will surprise you. It's an HP rune just with a big speed sub, so she's in HP, crit damage, and HP. And actually, since she's only 200 speed, that probably didn't surprise you. Overall, this set is over 100% efficiency, and I'm pretty happy with the build with one glaring exception. The 60 resistance is just a total waste. I couldn't get anywhere near a good enough build with just going no resistance, and I couldn't get her back to max resistance. So I kind of got stuck in this in-between build where I have 60 resistance that just doesn't do me much good. A lot of wasted stats, but not enough to really help on a consistent basis. So that is something that I'd like to fix with her down the road. Okay, next up we've got Chai Wu. Chai Wu is in Swift Energy build, Speed, Defense, HP. These stats would be great if it was a Despair build. In a Swift build, it is way too slow, but I don't use Chai Wu almost ever, and that's mostly just because I said it right this time, because he is not skilled up. Okay, next up we have Brandia. Brandia is in Rage Energy, and she's ruined completely just for Rift Beast, so Rage anything is fine. Even a Broken Rage would be fine there. Overall build is good. She can hit for just shy of 1,000,000 damage if I set everything up correct. The only thing that's missing is 3 crit rate. It would obviously, actually 18 crit rate to use her in multiple Rift Beasts, but at least 3 crit rate, you'd want to get to that 85. Next up we have Chloe, and my Chloe is going to be in Swift Guard, Speed, Defense, Defense. These are old runes. I honestly can't even remember the last time I used Chloe. She is still a really good monster. It's not a knock on her. I've just I've got better options, and she just kind of fell out of my own personal rotation. With that said, if I were to change her build up, I'd obviously want her to be a little bit faster, and I'd want to switch a little bit of that defense over to HP. 18k HP is just a little too squishy, especially because she does her heals based on a percentage of max health. Next up, we've got Beretta. Now, the interesting thing about Beretta is I learned through the comments in the Water Monster video that this is actually a dude. Didn't know that. Kind of struggling with that at the moment, but I'm going to trust the person who said it, so we'll say he. He is built only for TOAH. I only use Beretta once every couple to 3 months, probably. It's when one specific level pops up and I have to kill it with damage over time. But in the last FRR, I actually did boost Beretta's speed a little bit. I'm getting ready to test a new Rika, Water Homunculus, Beretta, Thrain type comp for the next TOAH, and so I boosted his speed a little bit for speed tuning. The overall build is fine for TOAH. Okay, next up we've got Maruna. Now, I only use Maruna in Labyrinth right now. If she was faster, I might use her in Siege Offense, because she is actually a really good monster. But ever since the twins got nerfed and Shayna no longer does attack bar reduction, I just don't really use twins in PvP. So Maruna is in attack, crit damage, attack. Does great for Labyrinth, and this would be a great build for PvP if she was about 70 speed faster. Next up, we've got Draco, and 285 speed in Swift, Energy, Speed, HP, Resistance. Now my Bastet is in max resistance for a reason. She really benefits from it. Draco doesn't benefit from max resistance the same way because he grants immunity. I mean, it certainly never hurts, but it doesn't need to be a focus. It was just the runes that I happened to have to build this set. Okay, next up we've got Antares. Now my Antares is in Despair Blade, HP, crit damage, attack. I would like to have him in Will, but otherwise the sets are fine. Despair Blade, I think, is a pretty common set for him because you need to get a lot of stats in him. He's actually a fairly stat-hungry monster. This overall build, it would not do for RTA, of course, and I use Antares a lot in RTA, and he's got much better runes. Just like all monsters we use in RTA now have much better runes, right? Because we have different rune sets, and you're not runing 150 monsters for RTA. Basically, might use them on a siege offense once every few weeks, and that's about all. Okay, next up we've got Shiwa. Shiwa is built specifically for Necro, so I'll put an info card up on the screen if you want to see how I got to this build. Watch the Necro NB10 video. Okay, next up we have Tessarian. Tessarian's in a 222 set. Accuracy, destroy, will, speed, crit damage, HP. Overall build is good. Accuracy is definitely a little bit low. Speed is a little bit low. But I do want to just point out one more time, the will runes are really important for a monster like Tessarian, who serves basically one primary purpose, which is to apply Oblivion. Now, Tessarian is a great counter to almost any monster with a passive, although I would not advise using him against like an Artemeal, because Artemeal will just rip him apart, and Artemeal is usually built with max resistance, so if you don't land the Oblivion, you're probably going to lose the fight. But in terms of the overall build, this is pretty well built. It's how I'd like to see my Tessarian built. Obviously, I might prefer to be in like a violent build. Okay, next up we've got Harmonia. Now my Harmonia is in Violent Shield and Speed, HP, Defense. So the best build for Harmonia here would actually be Violent Nemesis, Speed, HP, HP. But this build, again, works for how I use it. I use Harmonia in Siege once every couple of sieges if I'm doing a lot of 4-star fights in that particular siege. If you're using her in Siege, you're probably using her against Skogels at least sometimes, so you need to make sure she can take the Skogel hit. Other than that, you do want to put max resistance on all of your Windheart Magicians. At least that's my opinion. Because of the role they serve, that max resistance really benefits them. I know some people will do them in a crit damage build, and they can hit reasonably hard. But particularly with Harmonia, 2 of her skills do no damage. They're healing damage. And so you're going to be much better off just putting those stats into resistance rather than crit rate and attack and all that. Okay, next up we've got Rakan. Rakan is going to be in Vampire Will, HP, crit damage, HP. Again, fairly decent build overall for how I use him, which is once in a while on siege offense, and he's in one of my siege defenses. The one real big area that's kind of, I wouldn't say deficient, but that's short would be HP. It'd be nice if he had an extra 5 to 10k HP. Okay, next up we've got Akia, and she's going to be in Swift Guard, Speed, Crit Damage, and Attack. I built her right after the buff. I was super excited for her. Then I used her and all that excitement went away. I'm going to say I have better options. She won't crack my rotation. She won't crack a lot of late game players' rotations, but she will crack a lot of mid game players' rotations. The buff that she got wasn't bad. So if you're ruining her, I would say just be careful. You're going to want to pair her up with a stripper. She's got a big base speed, so make sure that you're speed tuning her properly with your stripper. I wouldn't mind having a little bit of extra accuracy and a little bit more crit rate, and she could probably be a little bit slower in exchange for those things. Okay, next up we've got Oki. Now, the first question all of you are wondering, no, this is not my RTA build. Unlike the Beast Riders, no, it's not even close to my RTA build. He is significantly better in RTA. My in-game Beast Riders are somewhat close to the RTA builds. Oki is not. But with that said, this build does really great for me. I use Oki very frequently. He's in my arena offense. I use him in every siege. He's in a siege defense. He's in a Guild War defense. One of my more used monsters. In this build, he still does really well. So he's going to be in Swift Will, Speed, Crit Damage, HP. If I could change anything, I would give him an extra couple hundred attack and a little bit of extra crit rate. And of course, as much speed as you can get on Oki is always a good thing. But with that said, I will say that the comps that I use him in, He's actually speed tuned fairly well with those comps, and giving him another 20 speed would actually create an opportunity for me to be cut. So I think for the way I use him, this is actually probably a better speed. Okay, next up we've got Daphnis, who's going to be in Swift Will, speed, crit damage, attack. I will say that the will runes are not necessary for Daphnis in my opinion. Generally speaking, you need Daphnis to take first turn. If he doesn't, then there's a good shot that your Daphnis may actually get killed with or without will runes. So it does protect from like a crowd control, like a Hathor type thing, but now you're kind of getting more into RTA. When you're in the main game, you're not going to bring Daphnis in against those types of crowd control monsters, or you're going to clearly outspeed them. So instead, what I would rather have is get my Daphnis up to 85 crit rate, add a good chunk of attack, and add at least 20 to 25 speed. Okay, next up we've got Arnold. Now my Arnold is going to be in Double Nemesis Will. He's in HP, HP, HP. That is pretty much the only way to build Arnold. His primary purpose is as a Mo Long counter. I do use him once in a blue moon in Guild War if my Perna is dead already, because I prefer Perna as a Mo Long counter. And then I use him in Siege if we're facing a guild that has a lot of Mo Longs. It might be nice to have 100% resistance, but it's certainly not necessary. All you really need with Arnold is as much HP as you can get, at least plus 65 speed, and then a little bit of defense and a little bit of accuracy. Okay, next up we've got Rika. My Rika's in Despair Energy, speed, HP, HP. I just finished skilling her up a few days ago, so I've only started to test her out a little bit. I haven't found a great comp with her yet. But what I will say is that I think while the overall build is good, if I'm going to have her this slow, and again, we're talking high Guardian level content. At this speed, this is kind of slow for Rika. If I'm going to do that, she needs to be in Will Runes. If I get her faster and then speed tune her with a booster, stripper, immunity monster, something like that, then she'd be fine to stay in the energy set. Okay, next up we've got Freya. Now my Freya is in Double Endure, Destroy, Speed, Crit Damage, Attack. And I know this is a really weird build. I will tell you, this might surprise you, I actually do use Freya once in a while. I mean, very rare, like maybe once every couple of days. There will be an arena offense that I'm facing where I look at it and I'm like, I see a lot of crowd control and defense break and all that crap, but I also see that a fire monster could die right away. So think about like if you have a Nephthys on the enemy side that's going to go first, and then the second thing that's going to attack is like a Shihu, let's say. So you see Nephthys, Shihu, and you know those are going to be the two fastest because those tend to be fast monsters. You bring in your Freya, you allow the Nephthys to go, that's going to defense break the Freya, that will bring the Shihu onto the Freya, it kills Freya, she dies and cleanses your team, and now you're able to take over control. It has to be a perfect setup for it to work, but it works once in a while. Anyway, so the way that I got to this build is she's at 70,000 effective HP, which makes her weaker than any other monster I have, so it ensures that she always dies first. And then since I had a lot of extra stats I had to dump in somewhere, I just gave her the ability to do some damage. That's the only reason we have the crit damage and attack. She does have a good chunk of resistance because I don't want a random Oblivion to land on her and block her passive from working. There was really no reason to give her speed. It was just because I built her in damage, so I figured I'd give her some speed as well. And then she's in the Double Endure Destroy because those are a lot of rune sets and a lot of runes that I don't use, so it was able to just take some unused runes and put them on a monster that could be useful once in a while. Okay, next up we've got Masha, and now the first thing all of you are thinking is, what? Why is she so slow? I know all of you were thinking she was going to be faster. And so it would be a long explanation for this that almost kind of needs to go into more of a Masha review. But what it amounts to is that Masha doesn't strip, doesn't sustain. All she is a damage dealer, so she needs to be paired with other monsters. And if you make her too fast, then she just runs into will runes and doesn't do anything. So my Masha is slower for speed tuning purposes, and if I do a Masha review one day, I'll explain all of that more in detail. She could benefit from having a little bit more accuracy, but it's not necessary. She could definitely benefit from getting to 85 crit rate, and I wouldn't mind her having an extra couple thousand HP, but the overall build here does its purpose. She's going to be in Violent Will, Speed, Crit Damage, and Attack. One thing I wouldn't mind seeing is maybe getting a little bit more speed in subs and switching her over to Attack, Crit Damage, Attack, which I actually think is the better build for Masha. Okay, next up, and this is actually last up. I know there's a Shayna down there. She's not ruined. So last up is Surtur, and my Surtur is in Fatal Energy, Speed, Crit Damage, Attack. He was built very specifically just to counter monsters like Miho and Garo, and he does that job really well. He does good damage, he's tanky enough to live. Just use him in Siege once in a while. Okay, I'm going to wrap up by just doing a real quick rundown on the 6-star monsters I have deruned and tell you why they're deruned. So this particular Shayna, she was built for just testing purposes for a BJR5 team. And the Ophelia, Helena, Zhongfei, Sekhmet, Kumar, Meihu Wang, and Laika are all monsters that are not skilled up. And I generally don't like to put good runes on a monster that's not skilled, and I don't like to use a monster that doesn't have good runes, so it usually just doesn't make sense for me to put runes on a Nat 5 until it's skilled up, unless that monster can be used without skill ups. They're like Daphnis you can use without skill ups. The Ludo I built for siege defense, but just haven't gotten around to ruining him and putting him on siege defense yet. Lisa I had used frequently in R5, but now I do BJR5. Platy I just built recently and do plan to rune her soon. I just haven't gotten a chance yet. Wahi was built a while back for testing purposes for the Wind Rift and didn't really do what I needed. Malaka is a monster that I built in case I want to do a bomber team in the future. Jean is a monster that does huge damage, but I don't use it all that often. He's going to be a PvE use, so basically he's built so I can hot swap runes on and off if I'm trying to test one specific thing, because I'll take a really big set from someone else instead of just leaving a so-so set on him. Clara is another monster I just built recently and plan to rune soon. I just need to make sure that she's fast enough to be useful. Fyro was the dumbest 6-star I've ever done. It was an experiment for TOAH that was done like my 3rd or 4th month playing the game. Spectra was an old TOAH monster. Tark was a monster that I built for testing for the rifts. And then this Tattoo over here is a monster that I want to 2A soon, just to test a theory that I have that's probably not even going to work, which is why I haven't done it yet. Okay, so that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you found this useful and entertaining, and as always, I really appreciate you watching. I appreciate all the interaction, the likes, the comments, and the subscriptions, and so thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video, please pop that subscribe button over on the left. It shows me that you enjoyed the video, but more importantly, it shows me that you found the information useful and hopefully it helped you in your gameplay. So here's the deal. You pop subscribe and I'll keep popping out content. Thanks guys.